It begins with the people of Isgard cheering for their hero. A boy and his little sister were rushing to witness the parade. The boy told her to hurry as the parade almost ended. The boy suddenly stops, and his sister asks him why as he was in a hurry. As the man dressed in a black robe walked past them, she told him the parade was over there. His brother told her not to stare at him as the man is a dark mage, and he was cursed. This is our protagonist Minjun Kim, an ordinary high school senior in Korea, who was suddenly summoned to another world, where he became a dark mage. Minjun met the saint. She addressed him as Minold as it's his name in this world. He showed her a demonic hat, then told her the last threat to Isgard had been eliminated, and asked her to fulfill her end of the promise, which was to send him back to his original world. The saint tried to convince him to stay for the sake of the empire, and promised to reward him for all of the ill treatment he had received thus far and more. Minjun told her to stop the act, asking her what could she possibly give him in return. He asked her to bring him Korean fried chicken and jokbal, as he's disgusted by the food in this world, and demand a monstrous PC with incredible specs and the fastest internet connection, as he is dying to play the Dungeon Power Fighter game again. The saint could not fulfill his demands, so she agrees to start the return ceremony. She told him to stand in the middle of the summoning seal, the exact place where he was originally summoned. Firstly, she starts by releasing the protection of the saint. Though it is called protection, it is just a leash that restricts him from fighting the saint. The saint asks one more time that is he willing to give up everything, the incredible powers, riches, and glory. But Minjun told her to mind her own business, and threatened her that, once the protection is gone, isn't she concerned that she could die by his hand? She accepts, saying that she started it all. For the next stage, she will remove the powers he has obtained in Isgard, saying it will be dangerous for him to travel through the dimensional portal with the power from here. But Minjun held her with his power. He is not willing to give up the powers he worked so much to obtain and open a dimensional portal by himself. The woman was shocked and asked him how did he manage to do it. Minjun replied he practiced it over 1,000 times. After all, he has reached the peak of his dark magic powers, leaving her and said to never see each other again. The saint was furious, claiming she does not do this because they enjoyed it. A purple light glows from a window, and Minjun finally arrived at his apartment. He sees his phone, eager to play, and immediately launches the Dungeon Power Fighters game. A notification pops up, saying no network connection. Outside, a squad of soldiers standing in formation following orders. The squad leader signals them to go. Upon seeing it, they find Minjun walking outside and talking to himself, saying it's been 2 years since he was summoned. He was pissed off just thinking about it again. He questions why isn't a single store open, and there is no Wi-Fi anywhere. The soldier thought civilians in this area were restricted, so how come he found a person in this area? The soldier asked Minjun to come this way. Minjun was surprised to see soldiers in a civilian area, and guessed they were just training. He apologizes and says he is just passing through. But then the soldiers shout, telling him to run. Minjun was shocked, and when he turned around he sees a large dog jumping towards him. The soldier shouted to dodge. Minjun, disappointed, saying this mud is not even worth a punch, tried to summon his demonic energy, but to his surprise, it is completely gone. He killed the dog with his bare hand, slamming its head to the ground. This reminded him of the strength training he had from Isgard. Minjun wonders why this monster appeared in this world. He called the soldier. The soldiers were shocked and afraid. He had so many questions. He let the soldier take him to the evacuation center. This isn't the Korea he used to know. The phenomenon of dungeons appeared when he was around 7 years old. Monsters started appearing in real life. With the appearance of dungeons, superhumans called the awakened start to rise. The Hunter Corps was established with members whose abilities surpassed that of average humans. They're the ones who handle the monster as soon as it appeared. So before being summoned by the Saint, Korea had no danger of being harmed in civilian areas. The soldier asks if he doesn't know anything. Minjun excuses his lack of information by saying he was living abroad. The soldier finds it suspicious, but not that he can do much about it. Minjun is only worried about the game. He asks if the game developers were safe, and whether the server storage system is still up. The soldier began to tell him everything. It started 2 years ago when the dungeons behave weirdly. It's getting larger and more frequent. The increasing number of giant monsters was the main problem. Since the military lacked in numbers, they couldn't control it anymore. So the military started recruiting normal citizens above 20 and serves for 5 years. Since Minjun is 21, he asks if he had already received an enlistment letter. Minjun was furious after spending 2 years in another world. He just wants to play the game and relax, but has to enlist for 5 years. He received a mail with a strange sound effect, the call of the nation. He looked at it and was shocked. The enlistment date is tomorrow. He asks if this is real. The soldier told him to just double check it by himself in the PC room close to the evacuation center. Minjun was elated upon hearing a PC room. After his parents went missing, playing games was his only entertainment. After depleting his need to play games, he checked for internet news articles. He found that everything the soldier guy said was true. Minjun is sure that if he could use his power from Isgard, he would have been able to clear all of the dungeons by himself. but he is still confident that he could solve all of this by himself, so he decided to enlist in the military. The next day, there were many people all depressed. Minjun, on the other hand, wondered whether it would be as tough as Isgard. The instructors were shouting, giving them the word of command to form in a proper formation. Minjun thought the instructors here were nice and excited about it. The battalion commander was giving a speech, starting with an invitation to join the Hunter Corps, stating the treatment of the hunters is exceptionally different compared to regular troops, and the base pay starts at
3 million won.
The hall is quiet. No one dares to raise their hands except our protagonist. He was ordered to come forward immediately. Minjun replied yes and jumped toward the commander, breaking the floor in the process. He landed and introduced himself, and state that he wants to apply to the Hunter Corps. The scene then switches to the past in Isgard 645 days before returning to Earth. Inside a cave in the Forgotten Canyon, in the northern region, Minjun was sitting on top of a spider monster, explaining how dark mages are different from regular mages. He states that while regular mages use mana which can restore itself naturally, he had to regularly collect it by defeating monsters with demonic energy, which is not very efficient since dark mages are despised and can't find a party member. He would be dead if he used up all his demonic energy while he is in a dungeon. He made a question: what is the best method for a dark mage to replenish their demonic energy and retain it? But no one answered, since the monsters are all dead. Then a dungeon boss, Arachnis, appeared. It screamed at him. Minjun said its answer was wrong, and with one punch killed the dungeon boss, and say, the correct answer to his question is, to defeat the monster with maxed out strength. Now we're back in the present time. The commander was asking him if he had any special reason for applying to the Hunter Corps, saying that things are pretty bad, and a lot of members returned to the regular army despite having special abilities. Minjun replied saying he had some business in the dungeons, making the commander laugh, thinking he is just joking, and said he is a funny guy. Dungeons in Korea are managed by the army, and the subjugation of monsters belongs to the Hunter Corps. They can advance in ranks regardless of their service period, as long as they prove their abilities, without any limits. Minjun imagined if he joined the Hunter Corps, he would be able to encounter monsters with demonic energy, and sure that he could clear the majority of them by himself. He will be able to advance quickly at the same time, get the ability to recover his lost power. Claiming he can get 10 stars in 5 years and will become a high-salary public hero, then the dungeon power fighter can relax and develop the fourth awakenings. While he was imagining his perfect plan, the Hunter Corps Sergeant, Lee Singo, arrived. The commander introduces Minjun to the sergeant. The sergeant then asks Minjun if he had the ability to be a hunter, saying that if he's awakened as a hunter, he should be able to open a status window, and command him to state all of his stats. Minjun remembered they had similar status windows which he barely used, as it just provided him with the number of values of his stats and abilities in Isgard 2. He wonders how it is here and opens his status window, which to all their surprise it says there's an error. The sergeant can't believe it. The scene then switches to somewhere in Gyeonggi-do, Hunter Corps Training Center. Inside an office, the training commander and Sun Yun-seo, the daughter of General Sun, were having a conversation. She was also a recruit. He praised her for her courage, and for choosing an ordinary soldier instead of an executive. The training commander told her about an interesting comrade she might get. The commander invited her to go pay a visit together. Minjun arrived and marveled at the military training facility. The sergeant was very stingy toward him, telling him to not get excited as his enlistment to the Hunter Corps has not been decided yet. He will personally test him as Minjun is a special case, and if he is found out to be lying, he would be immediately enlisted back to the military police, rather than Hunter Corps. Minjun asked what's the test, and the sergeant showed him a huge red stone. Red stone is a byproduct that was created from the dungeons. It is incredibly dense and heavy for its size, and it is also exceptionally hard. The sergeant told him he will give him 10 minutes to move even an inch, confident that Minjun would fail. On the other hand, Minjun was glad the test was simple. The sergeant was very irritated. He does not believe anything about him, thinking he is just trying to take advantage of the Hunter Corps with mediocre abilities, and status window error is just bullshit. The training commander and Sun Yun-seo were spectating him from a distance. The training commander said he had high hopes and was very interested. Minjun inspects the red stone. He said to himself he can easily push away this size, but goes for a blow, thinking there might be some demonic energy in it that he could absorb. With one blow, Minjun completely crushed the stone with his bare hand, which led everyone shocked. The soldiers were breathing heavily, climbing the infamous 6,000 steps with the weight on their ankles, since they'll participate in an actual battle immediately after the training period ends. The drills were very harsh, with a strict instructor, Sergeant Lee Singo. They expect all this hard work even before enlisting, but can't believe a guy doing so easily with great pleasure. At the same time, Minjun says his body feels so light that if he had all his demonic energy, he'd be flying. Minjun thinks the training seems so sweet, and the military uniform perfectly fits his style. He enjoyed the hunter course so much as they let their exercise, give them delicious meals, pay them handsomely, and give them time to play games. The sergeant was surprised to see Minjun finishing it so early, as it normally takes 1 hour for an average recruit. Minjun, upon seeing the instructor standing, teases him, asking him if he'd really going to grant an outing pass if they finish in less than 30 minutes, and ask him how long he took, the sergeant not saying a word, just handing him a pass. Looking at the stopwatch, Minjun finishes it in a record time of 21 minutes 1.43 seconds. The instructor thinks to himself, was there ever a recruit that received an outing pass before? But it's not everything to have high stats and good strength. The most important thing is the ability to react to the monster for the hunter core. And said he will be watching him. Back at the camp, the soldiers were exhausted. One of them said his stats went up by 1, and the others congratulate him, while Minjun was surprised that they get excited over one stat. This reminded him of his training in Isgard. He was trained to raise his stats by 10 points daily. The soldiers were praising Minjun as he managed to earn an outing pass from Sergeant Lee, which they heard nobody has managed to obtain it. They ask him if he regularly works out a ton. Minjun was startled that they were laughing and talking with him, since when he was a dark mage, the people of Isgard were afraid of him as they thought he was bad luck, and refused to even make eye contact. He started to think communication is not as bad as he thought. While he was thinking, one of them said that the PC room is open. Minjun jumped up from his bed, shouting why they just barely telling him, and rushed toward the room. Minjun scheduling to get at least 2 hours of sleep, considering even 1 hour of sleep, is a luxury in Isgard, and will deplete his game fatigue on a daily basis. After an extremely long walk, Minjun said he had 10 max levels the previous day. His mate seeing him, surprised he does not even drop a sweat, Minjun replied, saying it was just a stroll. His mate disbelievingly asked if he really played games all night, except for 2 hours for all 4 weeks, saying he's a monster or something, which Minjun replied. He even brought water to share and jokingly said that he doesn't want the water for calling him a monster. He immediately took his word back, saying that Minjun has such monster stamina is what he meant. The others were also pleading with him to share his water, which Minjun feed them like baby chicks. The lieutenant suddenly arrived. He declared to everyone that he is extremely disappointed. Even though they were in the last week of training, only half of them passed the standard, saying they're the most lacking squadron to date. If they are deployed after the training ends, half of them will die in a month and a half as they are now. To stir up their mind and raise the tension, the last stage of the training will be the notorious dungeon adjustment training. Occasionally, some dungeons will still remain after defeating all the monsters within the dungeon. It transformed into a transforming dungeon that will change its internal structure regularly, which became a great training facility to experience all sorts of the environment within the dungeons. So, the dungeon adjustment training is the real-life training that is facilitated within this transforming dungeon. The recruits were all stressed out. The lieutenant told them to not be discouraged, as there would be a great reward for the highest score from this training. Whoever scored the highest will receive a 2-night and 3 days vacation pass. He expected they will all become overjoyed when he announced the reward, but disappointed that nobody except Minjun looks overjoyed. It's the dungeon adjustment training day. Everyone tense upon seeing a huge dungeon entrance, except for Minjun, who looked unsurprised. A 2.5 military truck was rushing to the place. The recruits were surprised to see the 2.5 military truck there. Their surprise immediately turned into fear when they heard a growling noise from the back of the truck. Inside a cage, there were monsters, hounds. For the recruit, it's their first time seeing monsters up close. But for Minjun, the hounds were just equivalent to Maltese or Chihuahua. The lieutenant asked if they are scared of the monster they'll be facing, and said they will form a team of 4 recruits and enter a transforming dungeon. All teams would defeat a hound within 1 hour and return. The recruit can't believe they will be facing those monsters. The lieutenant encourages them, saying, if it hurts, strengthen your core. If you're scared, use your brains and fight it out with your spirits. Erwin Smith Wanab. The recruits were given armor suits for their safety. The armor is produced only with the intended purpose of protecting the physical body, and there was absolutely no effectiveness or comfort, and cost roughly 50 million won. Since it's so expensive and used very often, Minjun does not like its disgusting aura as he can smell everyone's sweat. Minjun asks the lieutenant if they could take the suits off if they defeat the hounds quickly. The lieutenant blindly replied to not be so arrogant, and then realized it was Minjun, the number 1 ranking recruit, so he allowed it. The lieutenant added that this test is ultimately a team training session. Minjun also had to take care of his comrades, so he cannot just outperform everyone else. Minjun get the idea and told his plan to his comrades. He told them that when the hounds leap to kill them, they should not be intimidated and just grab their legs and snap their backs in half. They should be dead if they do just as that. Even if the hound is still alive, then fold their backs in the opposite direction and rip them apart, like how you would rip apart kimchi. His comrades stared at him blankly, not understanding any of his instructions. The lieutenant ordered the monsters to be released. The instructor opened the cage, and the monster rushed toward the dungeon. The recruits were surprised that the monster went straight to the dungeon instead of coming for them. Minjun said that they were captured all day and their home just appeared, so why wouldn't they? The others realized it made so much sense and asked how did he know the psychology of the monsters so well. But Minjun does not answer because he was like that, and he speaks from his personal experience. The lieutenant has decided that the first team to enter will be Minjun's team for joking and laughing on the training ground. Minjun's teammates were very scared and entered the dungeon nervously, while Minjun was grateful that he could take off his dirty suit early. The lieutenant contacted the instructors inside and informed them the first team has entered. They should examine and control the situation if things get out of hand. The instructor saw Minjun in the team and was very interested to see how he performed in the dungeon. Minjun quickly realized the impatient hounds were ready to pounce. He is sure he can handle all of them as soon as they pounce, but he has to think the other comrades won't get any training experience. He told them they were coming. The recruits were very scared. Minjun told them the protective suits are really strong, so they shouldn't be afraid. Minjun decides he will take the lead, and with one punch killed the one rushing towards him. He saw his mate struggling, calling for help. He kicked the monster and killed it instantly. He told him if they bite, he has to fight back. If he is scared, they will think he is easy prey. He said to them that, if this was a real situation, 2 people would be dead by now, and we have to use the number advantage and pressure them. The instructors were surprised to see Minjun leading his scared teammates and making them act up, claiming he could be a Hunter Corps sergeant returned to the date before his enlistment, which is only possible in novels. The instructor decided that Minjun will get the highest score for his leadership quality and strength, and the rest will get an average score. The instructors reveal themselves and guide them to the exit. Minjun again teases the instructor asking if he is going to receive the vacation pass, and called them big cityers. On their way, the ground suddenly shakes. The recruit wondered if there's an earthquake, but Minjun said it was not an earthquake. The dungeon is transforming at this very moment, and the exit is closing in on itself. The situation is not looking very great, the radio is dead, and the instructors were panicked since the dungeon suddenly transformed a month early before they prepared. They decided to evacuate the recruits to somewhere safe. The instructor explained to them that there was no need to worry, and they will wait for an hour in the current spot, and see if the dungeon entrance opens up again as in the manual. They will try to assess the situation from the outside, and the lieutenant will take proper steps, so all they need to do is wait and calm down. But that was a lie, there were no such instructions in the manual. There are 2 instances when a dungeon's entrance disappears. First is when the dungeon dissipates, an instance when the dungeon naturally dissipates once you have defeated it. And when a portal gate disappears once an outsider enters, it is an enclosed dungeon. There is going to be more and more monster that appears, since the only way to exit an enclosed dungeon is to defeat every single monster within the dungeon. And since they were in an enclosed dungeon, any manner to assist them from outside is non-existent. The instructor knew they were only 6-4 recruits with no real battle experience, and 2 instructors. They don't know which monsters have appeared, and if they were unlucky it will be the end for all of them. But decided to move on rather than just sit still, while they still have most of their strength. Since the instructors do not have the equipment, the most successful and realistic plan of action would be to utilize the protective suits that the recruits have equipped. But as he thinks about it, his self-esteem will not allow it to use the juniors as a meat shield. While they were walking, Minjun suddenly stops. The instructor at the back asks, "Is there a problem?" At the same time, the corporal leading the line was choking and collapsed, and the instructor rushed to his aid, while Minjun shouted don't, as there's no way to save him. Both instructors collapsed, and the recruits were panicking. Minjun told them not to come closer, as they will face the same situation if they did. Minjun inspected and realized it was not serious, and they have just fainted. Minjun threw the body to the recruits and told them to not follow him and just stand by near the exit. The recruit said to stop, it is very dangerous that even the instructors fainted. But Minjun runs further following the smell. Excited that he picked a scent of demonic energy, which made even the awakened instructors faint. It's not surprising as even these guardians are veiled with a special protection that protects them against demonic energy before facing the monsters. However, demonic energy to dark mages is equivalent to a charger for a dead phone. Minjun reached the source of the energy. It was quiet, he can't find any traces of a monster anywhere. However, with such demonic energy, it can't remain hidden when facing a dark mage, and he looks up and finds a dark hound there. Dark hounds are species that are absolutely overpowering compared to ordinary hounds. During his first encounter about a year into his summoning in Isgard, he nearly died to this monster. Now he is glad that they faced again on Earth. The dark hound leaped toward Minjun, but Minjun punched and killed it instantly. Its demonic energy spills and spread everywhere. This is what made the dark hounds difficult to defeat, because it has venomous blood. When ordinary humans come in contact with it, their skin would rot. But of course, none of that applies to dark mages, and Minjun absorbs all the demonic energy. He feels excited to absorb the demonic energy after such a long while. Minjun was thinking about why the dark hound, which is normally found in Isgard, doing in a place like this. He did consider that it would be possible for the monster on Earth to harbor demonic energy, but judging by the instructor's reaction, and there is no teaching of demonic energy in the training center. So, he thinks it's the first time. Dimensional travel can only be done by someone like him, who reached the peak of dark magic, or by the saint who can utilize God's power, so the possibility is non-existent. He looked for the corpse to make a report. The recruits managed to wake the instructors up. The instructor immediately gets up and asks if they were alright. The recruit informed him that Kim Minjun headed deeper into the dungeon by himself. The corporal, upon hearing what happened, thinks about Minjun's action. Acting on his own is enough to kick him out of the team, but considered he had no right as he fainted instead of protecting. Minjun returned carrying a dark hound. He dropped the monster and asked the instructors to look at it. The instructors were shocked and asked themselves if this was what let them faint. The recruits can't believe Minjun defeated such a large monster. The gate reappeared. The corporal asks Minjun did he really defeat the hound on his own. Minjun nodded. The corporal let the instructor escort the recruit first, and said he'd follow shortly. As the others take their leave, the corporal told Minjun to report everything in detail to the lieutenant once they get outside and not to leave anything out, including how incompetent their instructors are, fainted and left the recruits on their own. He admits he did wrong and thanks Minjun for everyone's safety and takes his leave. Minjun was very grateful. He tried to head out. But then, his status system pops up, and it showed the error has been fixed. Minjun asks what kind of an error was it anyways. The system then showed his stats. Minjun thinks something seems strange. He was shocked that the cult he created as a joke was in there. The Lumi Nuna is my favorite character cult. Lumi is the character from Dungeon Power Fighter. And Isgurdi created this cult as a joke to get rid of the fanatics who followed him around like stalkers, but end up creating more fanatics. He looked at his stats and found that it was much worse than he expected. After he found out that his demonic energy was gone, he knew there was going to be another penalty for going through the dimensional portal. From his endless list of skills, only one remained. It was utterly useless. At this rate, he thinks he can't reach any of his objectives. But if he can do it in Isgard, he is sure he can do it again. Now that he has a clear objective, he will recover his power as soon as possible. This is nothing compared to the times in Isgard. That day, the entire training center was in utter chaos over the fact that a dungeon gate closed while training was in session, and a mere recruit managed to defeat a new species of monster, while the instructors were unable to do anything. Because of the unpredicted series that happened, the core training has been on standby. The recruits were chatting about how Kim Minjun caught a hound by himself, and think he could be advanced to sergeant within 2 years. They talk about how tough the Hunter Corps advancement exams are. Minjun was reporting himself to the training commander. There he found the lieutenant receiving his punishment. The commander dismissed the lieutenant and explained the situation to Minjun. The commander then told him that, since he received the highest score, the commander has a special proposal for him, and asked did he want to know. A crane in a flock of chickens. It's an idiom used to describe someone outstanding. The commander used it to define Minjun, as he is no ordinary human. He is the crane that makes even those above average seem like chickens. And said to himself he is lucky to live long enough to see such a sight, and thinks it would be a national loss if such talent were to join the regular ranks. So, he asked if he wanted to advance as soon as possible. Would he volunteer to join the Hunter Corps in Jiorwan of Gangwon-do, with an exceptional case, so he wouldn't have to wait another year. Minjun thinks about the proposal. 104th Division, the Invincible Hunter Squad. It's the place his comrades told him to avoid at all costs, as it snows constantly and the dungeons and monsters are very active. It is considered to be the most extreme out of the front lines. But it is exactly as he wanted. It doesn't matter where he is deployed if he can advance. A lot of dungeons are the best conditions possible for him. He can advance quickly and restore his power as soon as possible. So, he decided to go. On campus, Minjun and the commander bid their farewell. Commander Choi asks why he volunteered at a place everyone wants to avoid. Minjun replied he have an insane goal in life. Commander Choi told him to contact them when he reached there and take their leave. Minjun waited for his escort. The truck arrived, then a big soldier guy informed him to get in the back, and they depart. Minjun was worried that he would end up in miserable situations like in various shows, as he lacks the patience to put up with anything like that. They finally arrived at the place. The big guy guided him to his dorm. He opens the door and pushes him in, saying he's a newbie, feed and instruct him. Two guys immediately asked his name and a lot of questions with their joyous expressions. Minjun thinks these are the two alphas of the dormitory, and thinks they act as if they discovered a new toy. Minjun was irritated as they asked him many questions, and they told him to show them his talent. Minjun think if he showed his talent they will cut the crap. He agrees to show them 1-finger push-ups. One of them is unimpressed, saying it's not a talent, they can do that all day. But Minjun performs vertical 1-finger push-ups. They were surprised, asking if there is anyone who can do that. One replied, probably that sergeant. Then Sergeant Lee Sungo appeared near the door, saying to get lost. Sergeant Lee Sungo entered the room and sweep off the two pests. He lay down and looked at his phone about volcanic dungeons that have a naturally high temperature which causes constant damage. The sergeant ordered Lee Dongjin to instruct Minjun since Minjun is his direct junior. Lee Dongjun introduced himself to Minjun and asked if he'd like to talk over some food, as he had received a special permit to visit PX. PX stands for Post Exchange. It is a type of retail store found in military installations. Minjun was shocked that they can't even go to the PX as they wish. Lee Dongjun let Minjun pick whatever he wants to eat as much as he likes as he will be treating him. 300,000 won, said the receptionist. Lee Dongjun shakingly hands him his card. While Minjun was enjoying his food, Lee Dongjun explained the conditions required. Private first class and below can go to the PX only on weekends. Only private first class and above are allowed to use the gym, and at least corporals to use the PC room. Minjun thinks it was unreasonable to restrict the PC room and all. Lee Dongjun said that it's not something that can be changed as a private first class, and would need to advance to at least sergeant. He said that it was not easy to advance, since he had failed the advancement exam many times, and was still stuck in private first class for 3 years. Minjun told him he will surely advance next time. Sergeant Kim Gwangshik appeared, and Lee Dongjun nervously invites him to join them. He immediately grabs the food and eats their snacks. He said that if they were useless during the firearms training the next day, he wouldn't let them off easily just because he is new. And asked if Minjun knows how to shoot. Lee Dongjun said he was just about to explain it to him. Minjun was irritated and cast his magic skill secretly. He uses his E-rank corruption skill to cause Sergeant Kim's stomach to ache. Sergeant Kim immediately felt his stomach. He checks for the food expiry date, and he takes his leave, saying they should get back soon. Lee Dongjun was worried about Sergeant Kim, but Minjun asked him about the firearm training that the sergeant mentioned. Lee Dongjun asks if he had fired a KX-2 with ICM bullets before. ICM stands for Improved Conventional Munitions, and is used by Hunter Corps against monsters. So, he said that the ICM bullet they used here is even more powerful than those. It is like a pony and a wild stallion. Their equivalent sounds are as if you're firing a cannon. He said it might feel pretty awkward in the beginning, and no need to worry about it. Minjun thinks a pony and a wild stallion is a fitting comparison. And compared to the long-range weapon he used in Isgard, the weapon in Isgard must be equivalent to an elephant. He is very excited about the training tomorrow. The next day, at the firearms training facility, Minjun was shooting a target. He scored 19 direct hits with 1 miss. Everyone present can't believe their eyes. Some said it must be just a stroke of dumb luck. First Sergeant Hyo Tae-seok and Second Lieutenant Kim Min-chil were invigilating from a post. They were very impressed, and guessed the rumors were true after all. The two pests were asking how he shoot like that. Minjun replied he just shot as he was instructed. Sergeant Kim Min-ji came, and told him to continue showing his best in the special firearm training in the afternoon. Minjun asks Lee Dongjun about the special firearm training. Dongjun apologized for not explaining to him earlier, since new recruits take a while to get used to their ICM bullet. The special firearm training consists of a 2-person team entering the training facility and eliminating the monsters en route to the destination. Though they are highly dangerous, he will be dealing with moving targets. So, he must also be ready to counter their attacks. There will be civilian target plates that pop up, and hitting even one of them is an automatic failure. Dongjun shows his concern, saying that just because he will be facing real monsters, there's no need to worry as the executive will be controlling the situation. Minjun was excited and liked the idea that they will be facing live monsters.
In the cafeteria, while they were eating, Lee Dongjun said he can't believe Minjun hit 19 shots, saying he was born to be a soldier. Minjun also praises him for his result of 13 hits. Dongjun replied he is not that good, and the real deal is Sergeant Lee Sengho with the result of 17 direct hits on average, which makes him the #1 shooter in their squad. Minjun guessed if that's so, he is #1 now. Dongjun wishes him luck on his special firearms training. Minjun realized they would be a 2-person team and invites him to be his partner. But Dongjun told him his partner will be decided by the executives. According to rumors, it is done through the ladder lottery. In the special firearms shooting ranges, the training was about to start and informed them to be ready. Sergeant Gwangshik was his partner. Gwangshik told him the average finish time in their squad is 3 minutes. He tried to intimidate him, saying he will regret not finishing within 3 minutes. He simply replied he will try his best. Sergeant Gwangshik further added that he just want the result and threatened not to finish later than him. As Minjun and Sergeant Gwangshik are waiting for their turn, they watch the performance of Sergeant Kim Moongi and Sergeant Jung Hanyoung. The special firearms training starts after a group of 2 descends into the underground facility in individual elevators. It was meant to be tactical training for slaying monsters while protecting civilian target plates in an enclosed area. However, in reality, it has mutated into competition amongst the troops. Now the objectives are to complete the trial as fast and cleanly as possible and to press the finish button before their opponent. While looking at the screen, Minjun noticed that the monster markers seemed to vary in size. Guangxik told him the marker size depends on the monsters. The more dangerous it is, the bigger the icon. There are 2 monsters that are placed on each lane, and what they'll encounter is completely random. Minjun noticed that the guy on the first lane moved faster, but he was unlucky with the monster he got, so his opponent is going to catch up soon. The guy on the first lane finishes in 24 seconds, while the guy on the second lane was stuck with a desert worm with all-out defense at the end. The first guy mocks the second guy for being late and finds that aside from being late, he shot a civilian. When Minjun heard the 2 sergeant had a bet, he decided to make a bet with Sergeant Guangxik. The loser would grant the winner a wish, like a man. The sergeant burst into laughter. He accepts and said he doesn't have any wishes a mere private can grant, so Minjun needs to give him his salary for 3 months if he loses. Minjun agrees. They get ready for the battle and descend to the training ground. Minjun thinks to himself that he had fallen for his cheap provocation. He knew it but can't just sit by when someone provokes him. The training has started. The soldiers were making fun of Minjun when they heard Minjun and Sergeant Guangxik made a bet. The ground suddenly shakes violently. They thought it was an earthquake. They look at the screen and a large monster icon appeared between the monster's room. Minjun wondered what was the sudden tremor and felt it quite close by. He advances to the room and found a giant monster devouring the monster rat he should be facing.